as we're talking and introducing the session. I'm Juliet, Scott-Croxford CEO at Worth Media and your moderator for the next hour. And I'm delighted to be joined by Vanessa Barboni Hallik, founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, Julie Wainwright, founder and CEO of RealReal, Niall Murphy, CEO and co-founder of EVRYTHNG, and Kathleen, private wealth advisor at UBS. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
So many of us have been impacted by this global health pandemic, and many are still responding and recovering from the crisis and the extraordinary and devastating impact it's had on our personal and professional lives. Our focus at Worth is to engage, convene, and connect our community and partners with inspiring and informative content and conversations that are true lives in the world that we're now living in, to offer advice and support and insights and resources and connections. In this series, The Next Normal, we're looking ahead at what the world looks like after the current crisis passes, and how specific businesses and sectors not only respond to the current challenges, but also what they're doing to transform themselves and prepare for the future. So our third session today is focused on how the business of fashion is changing amidst the pandemic, and how sustainability, brand values, and innovative technology will play a larger role in how consumers choose their apparel in the future. We're delighted to be joined by Vanessa Barboni Hallik, founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, Niall Murphy, CEO and co-founder of EVRYTHNG, Julie Wainwright, founder and CEO of RealReal, and Kathleen, private wealth advisor at UBS, to share their perspective on the future of fashion. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. This is a conversation, and we do welcome questions from you, from everyone in our community. Attendees are muted on entry into this session. A reminder to stay muted, just to avoid any feedback issues. However, if you do have a question, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen and type in a question directly to me, Juliet Scott-Croxford. I can see that, or you can share it with everyone, and I can unmute you to ask the question, or we'll weave it into the conversation if you prefer to stay anonymous. So let's get started. Why sustainability is the future of fashion. Firstly, let's do a personal check-in with all of our speakers. How you're doing personally, how you're managing your own well-being during these unusual times, and just the sort of elevator pitch of your business. Vanessa, why don't we start with you and Another Tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, and I'm blessed to be home amongst family. We launched in January, so it's been fascinating times for us. And really, Another Tomorrow, we exist to model what's possible in the industry, as well as to really solve for what we see as core customer needs in terms of values-aligned product, as well as quality at a more accessible price point. And really, our brand values are transparency, animal welfare, environmental welfare, human welfare, and our platform includes a robust education section on sustainability, as well as a magazine that really goes into deep supply chain narratives. So very happy to be here, and happy to be here with both Niall, a wonderful technology partner of ours who really enables everything that we bring to the table, and Julie, which I think the RealReal was pretty much my first stop and continues to be for sustainability and really seeing things in as an asset.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vanessa. And Julie, welcome. Let's go to you next. How are you doing? And please share a bit about the RealReal.
Well, look, we're a public company, and the first thing we had to do was take stock of our employees and figure out how many we can keep on and how many we can't. And it's really been heartbreaking, because we had to lay off or furlough 800 people. And some of those, at least half of them, won't be coming back. We've also had to navigate the challenges of different rules and regulations. Governor Murphy operates different than Cuomo. They're closer, versus Newsom, who used distributed management and distributed leadership in the way he viewed things. So we've had challenge after challenge in both feeling from we couldn't hire fast enough to now we have to lay people off, and then also trying to understand each little town, what they're requiring, which is in California. in New Jersey, it's been clean. In California, the towns and the counties may be at odds with the state. And so you've got to navigate a lot of precincts. We've boarded up all of our stores. Hopefully we can start doing curbside pickup at some point. But, you know, it's been tough for me personally. Look, I mean, I happen to live in California. It's quite beautiful here. The weather's not good today, but we've had some beautiful weather. Sadly, they closed all the parks. So, you know, one of the big releases is getting out in nature. They did close the parks, but you can still take some nice walks. We also happen to have a lot of good wine here in California that's easily accessible and shipped right to your door. So it's not all terrible, but I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard. On the flip side, the company and the team have shown tremendous innovation, and we'll get into that later. But the management team, the directors, the entire company has innovated beyond the scope, and so we're going to end up in a really unique position when we pull out of this, which we're starting to see some light.
Thank you, Julie. You're certainly not the first one to mention wine on these events either. Niall, hi, you're in Geneva, Switzerland. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's been interesting being here in Switzerland. I mean, I figured out that it's well over 20 years since I've been in one place for this length of time, sleeping in the same bed under the same roof. So that's been quite an interesting adjustment for me. The joke normally is that I occasionally visit my family in Geneva, you know, but I think that's a good transition in many ways. I mean, our team in various parts of the world, you know, as Julie was saying, I mean, there's some difficult things that we needed to do, but I've been incredibly proud of the solidarity that we've seen across our organization. We asked people to tighten their belts and improvise in the way that they went about working, and that's performed very effectively. It's also been quite interesting dealing with the different cultural contexts. We had a bizarre situation. We have an engineering group in Belarus in Eastern Europe, which is the one European country that lived in denial of the crisis for quite some time, with the president saying drink vodka and go to the football game, right? So yeah, we had some interesting tensions in people understanding everybody else's context. But personally, the outdoors here in Switzerland is very accessible, so I'm losing weight, doing a lot of exercise. Can't complain. That's good.
Thank you, Niall. It's great to have you on and have the perspective from the sort of technology and innovation angle. And lastly, Kathy, how are you? How have you been dealing with the last couple of months? And just share a bit about the clients and businesses that you work with.
Sure. Yeah, the last 8, 9, 10 weeks have been really challenging. We work with my client base is ultra high net worth clients. We work with business owners, entrepreneurs, self-made, C-suite executives. So all of these different people who are going through exactly what we're talking about here, how to maneuver and navigate through this, COVID period of time and work from home. And it's my job to make sure that I help my clients from the financial perspective. And I'm really interested in hearing from your three guests today, because supply chain, digital transformation, sustainability, the environment, these are all really important topics to our clients. And I am always looking for ways to help invest clients in these themes as we move forward. So that's what we do. And in terms of the outdoors, I agree with everybody here. Getting outside, and walking outside, you get very grounded. So that's been a very big balancing act, being able to get outside, the fresh air, and just clear your head a little bit, because our old hours used to be 9 to 5, and it seems like COVID hours are 5 to 9.
Thanks, Kathy. And for those that have just joined, a very warm welcome to our third session in the Next Normal series, focused on how the business of fashion is changing amidst the crisis, and how sustainability and brand values and innovative technology will play a larger role in how consumers choose their apparel in the future. And we're delighted to have an all-star lineup today. We have Vanessa Barboni Hallik, founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, Niall Murphy, CEO and co-founder of EVRYTHNG, Julie Wainwright, founder and CEO of the RealReal, and Kathleen Entwistle, private wealth advisor, sharing their perspectives. So just to get started, Julie, you did touch on it a little bit in your introduction there, but how has COVID-19 the outbreak impacted your business over the past 2 months, and as well as the sort of general sort of fashion market as a whole?
Well, look, guys, it's going to be grim in the fashion world for a long time, but for us specifically, one of the best ways we get product is through in-home visits. Clearly, we couldn't do that. So very quickly, we re-engineered everything we did and started virtual. We started virtual consignments with curbside pickups and so the virtual consultations are working very well. The curbside pickups are all done with PPE. So that started bringing in the flow. The next thing is, again, very limited in California. Everyone, I'm sure, heard of Elon going on his Twitter rant. The truth is, there's some real legitimacy besides the drama he created, because the state and towns and counties are all out of sync. So figuring out what we could do, when we could work, how we could work. We've had to restructure our workforce across our operation centers, where we authenticate, we receive, we pick, pack, and ship, we shoot pictures, and do customers' returns. Our West Coast facility was basically shut down almost completely until May 4th. And even then, until we had to furlough all those people. And in the meantime, we put together a state-of-the-art health and safety program for our people, where they get PPE when they walk in, they have their temperatures taken. We bought hand sanitizing machines so we could actually, so we could make the product instead of relying on a vendor to get it. So we literally produce hand sanitizing, little bottles every single day, so you get your packed. We've had very few COVID. We've had some COVID cases. They look like they're all externally generated. People are talking about tracing. We have cameras everywhere, so we could trace people that they came in contact with the cameras. And then we furloughed. We gave people unlimited healthcare time off, gave them an incremental wage, started feeding them lunch. So all of these things didn't exist prior to COVID. We're also changing. We're preparing for curbside pickups from our stores, which I think again, Newsom said they're going to start doing it. And last Friday, San Francisco is saying sometime this week. We won't be ready for a few weeks. It's a technology change. New York isn't open, a big market for us, so we'll see where that opens. So everything changed. And in the meantime, what we found out, and I know I'm going on and on, but it's really fascinating because it's been 2 months. Our bags, our white bags, which is what we do our pickups on, are perfect for people who are delivering food to people's homes and buying groceries. They're sturdier, they're bigger, they're weight balanced. So we've been donating the white bags for food delivery. We've been donating our vans to run hospital gowns to people in need. And we were early on the PPE, and we bought a lot. So we also donated PPE at about 200,000 to the states that we work with, while also having enough for our team. So all of that didn't exist as of March 10th. So if you think about that, it's pretty remarkable. But we've moved to virtual on all levels. Now, look, it's going to take a while, because even when you say, oh, your people can come back to work, unfurloughing people isn't always easy. I'm going to go on one little other thing that's really fascinating. When the government decided to give people the money, this $600 per week for unemployment supplement, if you're making, which is sort of our average, about $15 an hour, so that's a normal wage. That's our low end of the wage, our entry wage. Your average take home went up from about $30. 30,000 a year to now 48,000 if you're unemployed. So you have another benefit where you're actually competing with unemployment to bring your workers back. So this has been, I mean, it's challenging on all levels. I think our government has done, I mean, it's very hard to navigate in these unknown times, but when it's better for people to not go to work, it's hard to bring them back. And when I'm not talking about health and safety wise, so I'm talking about you make more money by staying home.
Yeah.
So we've also raised our wages, and then the other thing that's been devastating, I think by the time we get through this, we're at 36 million people unemployed in the US now, 36 million. According to different stats, there were 165 million people working in February. So we're getting very close to 25 to 30%, which was the upper end of unemployed people. So, you know, there's a lot of pressures on a business. There's a lot of pressures on fashion. There's a lot of pressures on retail. Retail wasn't a big part of our business, but it's really going to be challenging to get back to normal. So I would say everything I just said to you, you have to put everything in the mix. You have to put your safety of your employees. You have to put the politics involved. You have to put different political styles, and you know, you deal with the one city and a county in California at a time. You have to put the concerns, the real concerns about the employees doing the work. You have to put the consignors who want to sell their things because now they're unsure of their income. So it's been crazy. I do feel like it started turning, like things got brighter May 4th. And then we had to re-engineer our code. So, you know, you've got, you know, we're basically a tech company at the end of the day. So all of that happens. And, you know, every day is a new day. Every day is like a week. But again, I'm very proud of the team. It does feel like things are lifting. So you got another question? There's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack.
I mean, the impact is extraordinary, and I just think you've articulated so many impacts just in that answer across sort of societal impacts, political impacts, business impacts. It really is so far-reaching, and I saw that number, the 36 million number reported this morning, and it's incredibly sobering number. I think what's interesting about the RealReal and also Another Tomorrow is that in launching your brand, that you've started with purpose and sustainability at the heart and at the core of the business, and I feel like brands that do that and that are truly rooted in purpose as well as profit are able. It feels like they have pivoted and are sort of sustaining themselves better than perhaps some of those brands that didn't start with that at the root. And Vanessa, I know Another Tomorrow only launched in January, but I'd love to kind of hear from your point of view. Obviously, from a supply chain point of view, you very much started with the transparency of your supply chain. How has the last 2 months affected sort of what you intended for the brand going forward?
You know, it's been really fascinating. I think that the major upside of building the supply chains the way that we have is that we really know our partners. So we know our suppliers, you know, down to the people who make the buttons, down to the people who supply the Carozzo, you know, from a tablet for the buttons. And so I think in these times of stress, you have these ready-built relationships that you can really dig into and support each other in a very real way, and also try and problem solve. I think for us, there's been a bit of luck in that the majority of our spring deliveries had already taken place. So when Italy really shut down, we were on the better side of that. The challenge for us has really been product market fit and needing to pivot from that standpoint. And so, you know, our collection really runs the gamut from you know, t-shirts all the way up to, you know, structured tailored garments. And so we've just had to get very real about what people need in this particular moment in time. And it's, you know, by and large, not so much a blazer. So we've sort of shifted gears a little bit. But it's interesting from a psychological perspective that we do see that people are starting to invest for the future. They're thinking really very strongly about the ecosystems that underlie their products. And I've seen just a tremendous amount of curiosity, which has just been, I think, a beautiful thing, and a real desire to put people's money to work, the scarce money really that it is, to put it to work in a way that that supports their values. And so I think that we've seen just a huge wave of curiosity and inquiry that's quite different, actually, even from when we first launched, where a lot of the customers really resonated with the fact that we're getting luxury quality at a more accessible price point. And so for us, the challenge has been communication. So we really looked forward and enjoyed our early stage events to really commune with people in person when we first launched. And so we've had to think about, how do you continue that conversation in a real way, in an intimate way, in a relationship building way in this digital environment. And it's through things exactly like what we're doing right now, as well as developing things like personal shopping and pilots of that kind. But yeah, by and large, I think that a big issue that's come up through this crisis, and even really last year with all the trade issues, has just been supply chain resiliency. And this is where I think relationships are critically important, and transparency is really what enables that at scale.
Thank you. And Niall, I know that you and Everything and Another Tomorrow have worked together and are partners together. I'm curious from the angle of sort of the technology and innovation that you provide. What do you think is changing and will change over the coming months in relation to specifically kind of the fashion and direct to consumer sectors?
So everything is focused on the digitization of physical products. What we do is we provide a mechanism to connect products to the web and therefore collect traceability data about those products right through their life cycle, manufacture, retail, to the hands of the consumer and beyond. And this end-to-end visibility was, it has been an important driver on elements like sustainability. How do you achieve transparency? Well, you have to gather information and substantiate that information about every product item, as Vanessa has been explaining. But as we've seen the crisis unfold, the issues of resilience or lack thereof in various aspects of the supply chain have come to the fore. Within both the fashion and apparel space and in other categories, we've seen businesses caught out actually with dependencies in their source materials, their raw materials, their components within their supply chain that they didn't realize that they had, right? Because they don't have a sufficient level of depth of visibility across the supply chain. And then various disparities. So in the I could say the early stages of the crisis, when the concentration was predominantly in Asia, we saw factory slowdowns in apparel production, because of labor issues and access to facility issues. Whilst there was the problem did not exist on the demand side in that situation, the problem existed on the supply side, and we are digitizing factories to be able to produce items on a digitized basis. The problem then flipped to a situation where demand has just dropped off a cliff in the fashion space, and we've been through a period now where both problems existed. That supply is starting to come on stream now, but doesn't have demand, right? So there's a very interesting disparity. As we've seen apparel companies shifting their models from in-source production, for example, to outsource production in an attempt to reduce their cost exposures to a more variable model, and that's creating whole new demands to reorganize information flows within their supply chains very, very rapidly, right? So those are a few things. I think the last point I'd make is that clearly the retail model has changed completely. I think the estimations are, there's a McKinsey estimation that North American e-commerce purchases will return. Right now they're massively in the sky, but they'll return to 2x year-on-year growth in e-com demand, and obviously many conventional retail channels, particularly for apparel, are closed, and many won't reopen, right? How many consumers are going to go back into a department store? So this is causing quite a lot of innovation, and we're seeing various brands responding by working out how to significantly scale their DTC channels. One of the vehicles to do that are the products themselves, so that consumers can actually build a relationship with the brand. They may be purchasing a product through an e-com channel, and the brand wants to then extend that relationship post that purchase. So a lot in that, but there's a wholesale reorganization of the supply process, a realization that resilience is a risk factor and volatility is going to continue, and that clearly the interface to the end customer has got to be changed. The means of being able to access that end customer and innovate that relationship has got to be changed.
And now, what do you see as like the role in data and consumer data and the importance of first-party data as we go forward? I mean, it was already important for brands, but presumably even more now, right?
Yeah, I would argue that will become a valuation defining issue, right? Because a narrowing of channels to some degree means that there's more exposure to if brands don't have an ability to pull the levers of their consumer relationship. And so that first party data of consumer relationship is important. Equally, the instrumentation of the supply chain and the data intelligence that brands have about that will define the agility with which they're able to flex their supply chain and adapt to new channels. So enterprises that just don't have that data are vulnerable, and I think the analyst community will be looking at that degree of fitness, if you like. That's applicable to sustainability, which I know we'll move into talking about. And it's applicable to operational agility, as I said a few moments ago.
Thank you. A reminder to everyone that you can use the chat function to submit questions. We have got one from Justin in the UK, so I'm going to flip to Justin now to ask his question. I think it's in relation to sustainability. So I think Julie and Vanessa, you'll certainly have a point of view on that. Justin, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I mean, great coming onto this webinar, and the title of it, Why Sustainability is the Future of Fashion. I mean, it's well recognized that there's a huge amount of waste in the fashion. Either selling things that people don't want to wear, or they're just low quality, maybe the ethical standards aren't good either. How hopeful are you as a sustainable brand? How hopeful are you that we change, that we can see a change in this? And how do you balance that? Because as a business, that you want to increase your revenues at the same time as wanting to reduce waste. And hopefully you've got all that, because it's breaking up on the screen here.
Julie, can you take that first? Did you get that?
I did. I got it. Look, we're the back end. We've been a thought leader and advocate that the future of fashion circular. We're not fans of fast fashion. We're fans of things that are made well, because then they can be resold. So look, the truth is the supply chain issues are, in a weird way, COVID may speed up some of the horrific challenges with the supply chain just because they can't act like they did before, but the supply chain challenges are real. And if you just trace back into, and the government regulations need to get tougher, but if you just go back to, let's take, so everyone thinks Levi's is sustainable, and they would tell you themselves, they are sustainable. They have a lot of initiatives, but the truth is they operate in countries that don't force them to clean up the water when their dyes seep in there. They work in countries where they may have to negotiate with unseemly groups to get water to dye their jeans. I'm just giving you an example, and they've been on panels with me. And until laws change, even COVID isn't going to change some of the practices. So laws have to change. We can't continue to produce so many goods that end up in landfill. There's a truckload a second going into landfill as we speak. 50% of what's made doesn't sell. A lot of the luxury brands are still burning their bags because they can. They're still burning their things because they can. Burberry stopped. Burberry partnered with the RealReal. We're in conversations with other large brands, but until the government really force it, COVID's not going to force sustainability. And we view this as a serious issue. I mean, we've spent a lot of time quantifying the positive impact of consignment. And as I said, some of the luxury brands are working with us. Some of them are working against us. So ultimately, the consumer is going to decide and they're either going to spend against their values, or they're not. And, that's yet to be seen, but it's eye-opening how much goes into landfill every second. Every second, a truckload. COVID isn't going to change that. The only thing that's going to happen in the short term is retailers are going to go bankrupt and go away, and brands are going to go away. Not necessarily something I believe would do, because it's not a supply and demand. It's an unnatural force. It's forcing businesses to end, but it's not going to get better. I hate to be that person saying that. It's just, I know, at least in the world which I play in, which is recirculating goods, some brands are all for it. There's going to be some announcements with other brands in the near future. There would have been if COVID wouldn't have ended it. They really get it. Other brands are like, no, we don't believe in recirculating goods.
I think, Julie, it's interesting, like that sort of conscious consumer, though, and I do think the consumer mindset is changing, certainly among my peers. And Kathy, I'm interested in your thoughts around this as a consumer of fashion and apparel. What are your views on who drives this change around waste and sustainability?
I do think the first thing is understanding and having the information out there and available to people. So education, it starts right there. It's interesting, though, as a personal consumer listening to everyone speak, great insights. I would say too, though, work from home for the last 9 weeks. I'm in New Jersey. We're working from home, and we're all thinking we can't have access to things right now because every time we go onto a website to order, it might take weeks and weeks and weeks to get things. So I think somehow changing that consumer mindset is going to be very important too, in order to push through sales. In terms of supply chains and the technology, all of these things are things that we're thinking about for our clients. And we do think that this is going to have an impact. It's the drive-by birthday party or something by my house right now, because there's cars going by beeping horns like crazy. So hopefully you don't hear that. New world. So in any case, I would say education. Also understanding, like when we work with our clients, whether they're business owners or individuals, the first thing we want to do is understand what their priorities are when it comes to their goals and their values. And then we want to match up their resources to that. So it's really no different than what the RealReal is doing, what Vanessa is doing, and using the technology that Niall has. We're trying to put it all together. So I think that's really critical.
And Vanessa, just share a bit about sort of your distribution model and your focus on sustainability. A lot of your clothes are made in Italy, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we make all of our tailor garments in Italy, and the t-shirts are made in Portugal, which, this is certainly exposed some concentration risk for us, to say the least. But I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about what Julie touched on, which is part of the reason why actually we do produce a lot of the goods in Italy and Portugal. And a big part of that is quality. And another big part of that is the enabling systems to actually pay living wages, and the fact that there's really that infrastructure that exists there. So I think as we think about the opportunities for nearshoring in this country, there's a huge amount of opportunity to actually bring good jobs to the United States as we think about some of these supply chain, resiliency issues. Frankly, when we think about the big picture issues for the fashion industry and retail and overproduction, we're in a different spot with a blank slate. You know, we're a brand new brand, and so we control our destiny and our growth. But one of the things that I think is challenging in terms of getting consumers to think about clothing as an asset is this really destructive sales cycle that the industry is in. And I think it's really positive to see that some of that is changing, but it's very difficult to train the customer to think about clothing as an asset when the retail price is only the retail price for a month, 2 months at best, and then it's, you know, 40, 50, 60% off. So I think that's really challenging. I do think that the education piece and the communication piece is so important to actually enable customers to make better decisions. It was one of the major reasons why I started Another Tomorrow, because I found it just so incredibly frustrating to actually get any level of coherent information about how a product was made. I mean, we're pretty much lucky to know what country it was manufactured in, let alone, you know, how it was made. So I think we're at a moment in time where the information is available, the enabling technology to deliver that information to the customer is available. And I think it's going to be, you know, once we come out of this, it's going to be pretty tough for a lot of companies to say, you know what, that's available, and we choose not to use it. So that I think is going to be a big deal going forward.
Hey, do you mind if I want to just take this policy thing a moment? Do you have a moment? Do you mind me just jumping in here on this?
Go, Julie.
And the reason being is really consumers need to vote with their values. However, there isn't clarity and there isn't transparency. I agree completely. But more importantly, businesses won't change. We're set up to be sustainable, but businesses won't change unless the laws force them to change. The US isn't going to do it. Asia's not going to do it. When I talk to people that are working in various Arab countries, they just don't care. They said the consumers, they don't even talk about sustainability. However, Europe is on the forefront of actually setting laws and forcing people who produce fashion to meet those environmental concerns through production and also in post sales. So burning of luxury goods will not be something that can happen by I think 2023 or something. They're phased in. The US will still want to sell into that market, but a group of countries have to come together and set standards. Otherwise, it's not going to change. I mean, we're all talking, you know, we're talking about this. Like I said, some brands love resell and believe in the circular economy and really build things to last. Like Stella McCartney's always been on the forefront. Burberry joined us. The Caring Group in Europe and also in the US is actually taking sustainability very seriously, hence Pinot's work with France. Chanel isn't. And, you know, so I'd love for any of you guys to say you'll never buy another Chanel bag, but you will. Chanel doesn't care about the circular economy, and they don't care, and they really don't want the secondary market to exist. And they'll do whatever they can against regulations to get environmentally clean. And they'll never admit it because they're not public. So all of this sounds good, but the truth is until governments, and it's not going to, like I said, it's not going to happen in Asia, it's not going to happen in the US, but if the EU gets together and makes firm statements, then we're going to start seeing real change.
Yeah, I think you're right, Julie, and I think like we have to legislate for it and force it, and I think that will come through alliances. Niall, I'm curious on what your response to that is, being in Europe at the moment.
Well, there's actually a fascinating opportunity and potential convergence of needs here that the crisis is driving, right? Because one of the issues that I talked about resilience or lack thereof in supply chains earlier on, and that's an issue that has come to the fore, not so much for the fashion and apparel space, but in other vertical industries. For a lot of national governments, they realized that there were critical exposures that they just didn't have visibility on. So, you know, Julie's correct that in Europe there has been a drive towards more demands for sustainability, but we're also seeing an increased requirement for disclosure now for resilience purposes, right? And actually, that's a pretty interesting requirement, because when you have transparency for resilience, you're having transparency, and transparency creates a vulnerability from a brand perspective if they are vulnerable, right? And so I think that there's an opportunity in that, right? And obviously we should try to take advantage of that as much as we possibly can to see this driven through. It's certainly been a topic in a lot of supply chain conversations that we've seen. I think the interesting question, and anecdotally, and I'm curious as to Vanessa's opinion and Julie's opinion on this. Anecdotally, there's an indication of a shift in consumer values and consumer purchase values, probably differently at the higher end consumer base than at the lower end consumer base, particularly in a recessionary environment. But and I say anecdotally because I haven't seen any hard data on this, but we are seeing a number of major consumer brands make planning assumptions on that basis, and certainly, and this includes fashion categories, we've seen an acceleration in the desire to not just greenwash it, but to be able to accelerate practices on an assumption that this is going to be a selection decision-making criteria amongst the premium consumer base, right? So I'm curious as
those brands, Niall, that you've seen that.
Well, an initiative that actually Levi's have been involved in, the Our Collective initiative, upcycling denim products, recently announced. That's one specific indicator, but there are other larger initiatives. I can't really name the brands on, unfortunately, that where the driver of that activity is a presumption of a shift in consumer purchase values. Where outside of fashion, in the food space, this is very much a trend that there's the sort of brand values that are being articulated are one whereby it's assumed now that the consumer has more empathy for those that are involved in the supply chain of their products, because they've been just media has exposed a lot more about what was breaking down in the crisis, right? But anyway, I don't know if Vanessa thinks that consumer shift is real or whether it's an aspiration, right? That we have, and what you think of that.
We'll have to see. I think fashion and sustainability, it's been a hard sell historically, in part because the actual benefits to you individually, I would say, are less than the perceived benefits in food or things like clean beauty. You kind of have to really understand, as you articulated, who is behind the supply chain and have empathy for those who are experiencing the impacts of your decisions, halfway across the world, especially as supply chains have really globalized for the last 30 years. So I think it's a unique moment to test this for fashion, because it really has allowed so many people and so many, critically vital areas of the economy to become seen in a way and create that empathy. So I'm a glass half full person. So I think that for a group of people, this is going to be a pretty sticky experience. And for others, it may not. But I think we can't underestimate the degree to which this period is actually a retraining of human behavior. These lockdowns have been going on actually for quite some time. This isn't just a vacation. I'm going to go exercise before a summer holiday. And this is really, I think, reestablishing the benchmark for what each of us actually needs, and for how we want to experience our lives, and for the human connectivity that's quite meaningful. So I'm hopeful, and I think it's going to be really interesting to actually monitor.
There's a question from Susan Brunn. Susan, are you there with regards to the policy comments?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, I know in the world of makeup and cosmetics, there's the environmental working group. I'm wondering, is there an organization like that works on an international basis that monitors sustainability in these various companies around the world?
Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'll give what I know. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which really is based in the UK, but has had a lot of success in influencing the laws in the EU laws, has tried to quantify the impact of fashion and the impact of this. They've been the proponent of circular economy and the positive impact of the circular economy. But I would say it hasn't been in fashion's best interest to hold up a mirror and look at what they're doing to the planet. In fact, and it was been more their best interest to actually keep it out of the press. Now, having said that, Europe is leading the way. I would look to Europe. It's not a worldwide initiative, but the work that Caring's chairman, Michel Pinot, is doing in France, the work the EU is doing, will set standards for anybody who wants to sell in those countries or produce in those countries. And given that European brands in the luxury space are actually still the kings and queens of all luxury, I do think change will come. That doesn't mean fast fashion will follow. It doesn't mean it will happen all over the world, but Europe is leading the way in policy. I haven't seen a worldwide initiative, but I do think there's more hope than not even 3 years ago.
And just thinking about the future, Vanessa, what does the next 6 months look like for Another Tomorrow? And is the future of fashion sustainability?
I think the future is definitely sustainability insofar as I think we have too many tools to accomplish it, that to not do it becomes a pretty bad look over time. For us, the next 6 months is really about listening to our customer and really trying to have a pulse on what they actually need. I think that is the biggest challenge in terms of the fashion industry right now. As the last thing that we want to do as a company is be a part of the problem that we're setting out to solve, which is producing things with some speculative understanding of what your consumer actually wants. And so we're very focused on tightening up those relationships and really listening. So that's, I would say, the focus for the next 6 months is how do we build a more nimble and receptive company to really those fluctuations in demand, which I think will prove a big challenge just given the uncertainty.
Thank you. There's another question from Milton. Milton, are you there?
I wanted to know whether, given technology and data and a combination of innovation, will the future of fashion also be more custom made and made to measure, such that we don't have a lot of inventory hanging around, and that might contribute to sustainability? I just wondered. So thank you.
Thanks, Milton.
I can comment on that. Certainly, yes. I think that the focus on both shortening the cycle in terms of real-time design and efficiency within the supply chain is one aspect, but we certainly are seeing a number of brands investing in both nearshore and in some cases robotic production mechanisms, which are designed to allow that singular on demand at some scale as a path to solution. I think this is part of the trick now, is in a data-driven context. There's a possibility to, if you'll excuse the pun, stitch together relative components to meet a customer's need, and that might be logistical components or material components. So this is part of the battlefront, is who can be smartest at doing that.
Thanks, Niall. And Kathy, a question from you probably get asked this multiple times a day, but what does the future look like in terms of the market the next 6 months? I know we saw that the awful unemployment rates today.
Sure. So I would say, my personal opinion is the second quarter is going to be very difficult. Probably, companies are reporting earnings after the second quarter will probably be the worst that we've ever seen in our lifetimes, right? And we're going to see a lot of companies going out of business. We've seen some retail companies file for bankruptcy already. We've seen multiple layoffs. There will be consolidation. I also think, though, there's really great opportunity. So that's the negative. The positive is out of this, we will be stronger. We will find ways around it and ways to do things better. So I also believe in the next 6 to 12 months, we will also see the greatest growth in earnings and GDP that we've also seen in our lifetime. So a big drop and a big pullback up again. And I would say that for companies that can pivot, and we've been talking about this, me and you, Juliet, for like a while with all these different companies, but those that can pivot, they have the technology, digital transformation, the things that Julia, Niall, and Vanessa are all talking about. I would imagine that they're all going to be doing great in 6 to 12 months because of the things they're doing. And we're going to see companies come out of this and be stronger as a result. So in terms of short-term view, might be a little tough, but we are, progress, not perfection. We are long-term view. And as long as companies and individuals have balance sheets where they have strong, cash on their balance sheets, you always have to have that emergency fund ready, whether it's for your business or your own life. And you have a long-term view with your investing and what you're investing in, including sustainable products and investing, put your, money where your values are. And the last thing I'll say is we did a survey probably, I don't know, about 6 quarters ago about sustainability and who was interested, in sustainable investing. And we noticed it was a very small percentage that were interested in it, but they would go very deep with their pockets when they were interested. So I think there's a great opportunity to spread that interest across, multiple people across the country and across the world. And therefore we have a lot of hope for the future of sustainability.
Thanks, Kathy. And Julie, your views on the next 6 months, both the expectations from e-commerce point of view. I know Cynthia had a question on that, but also what does the next sort of 6 months look like for the RealReal?
Well, look, we had to get back and get working. So again, we don't make goods, we recirculate goods. So we're going to end up stronger. There's no doubt about it. Virtual appointments have been a game changer for us. We are ready. We're automating the work in the warehouse that actually got more focus. We use machine learning and AI to help actually move the product through to write copy, to understand, actually even to identify consigners that are bad eggs and counterfeits in the market. So we're going to end up better than we were. And I'm really excited. What I heard is it sounds like UBS is more a fan of the swoosh than the V. We actually think it's going to be a long recovery for most people because e-commerce is always going to reign supreme. Again, we're a little different because we don't manufacture, we have to pick up goods. So I'm glad we're like 98% an e-commerce company with a little retail. But look, consumers, it's going to be tough. It really, we're at this pivotal point where what governments do to help their people get back to work and also their focus on getting a vaccination and preventative medicine, how much effort is going to determine every country's economy. And that's a weird thing to say, as an entrepreneur, you like to think you chart your own destiny, but this is bigger than whatever any of us are doing here. Governments are going to help get people back on their feet. They're also going to help get science help give us some form of living with this horrible situation. But it's for the RealReal. We feel great about what we are and where we're going. It's just, when you see the numbers, again, I just want to talk about the environmental impact in the US of having 36 million people and growing unemployed cannot be underestimated. That is a horrible situation. But I actually have faith and hope.
Me too, me too. I think it's certainly, there's a lot ahead, but there are bright spots. Niall, what hope do you have?
Well, from a selfish standpoint, digital is being accelerated, so we're pretty optimistic for what we do in the medium term, and I think that the stronger companies, the companies that had diversified channels, that had e-commerce activity happening, those are the ones that are making it, and we're seeing some pretty forward-thinking investment in what they need to now accelerate in the environment. And competitively, there's going to be a thinned out space, right? And those that can innovate and put the new tools of success in place quickly are gonna win. So that plays out for our customers in the fashion space and elsewhere, and for ourselves, right? And we certainly feel like there's a poised opportunity here, and that's important to pounce on. Now, entrepreneurs will always look at the glass half full, I guess, and in an optimistic fashion. I do think that I think Judy's point is right, that there's a macro situation that's much bigger than any of us, and we've got to keep our eyes on how those things affect us. But I'm tremendously motivated by the degree of collaboration and just conversation like this that's going on every day across industries, where people are trying to work out how to find paths to solution, and that bodes well, right? That's what we want to see in humanity, is collaboration and working out how we solve each other's problems together. And I think that I'm pretty optimistic about the fact that we're gonna dig ourselves out of this hole. We're gonna dig ourselves out of this hole well.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Vanessa, Julie, Kathy, and Niall, thank you so much for such an honest and engaging dialogue. I think that the collaboration that we've seen over the last couple of months is inspiring, and I just want to say thanks so much for being part of this conversation on the future of fashion. Thanks again for our sponsoring partner UBS, and most importantly, thanks to our community and all of you that joined us today. Thanks for the great questions and the engagement. We hope you found it useful. Please do share any feedback with us. We'd love to hear your comments and any topics that you'd like us to cover in the future. You can email us at community@worth.com. In next week's Next Normal series, we're joined by Don Garber, the Commissioner of Major League Soccer, and Private Wealth Advisor Kathy Entwistle again. We'll discuss what the future of sports will look like for fans, teams and owners, given what we've been going through over the past few months. Please register online at worth.com/events for this, and take a look at all of our events coming up, as well as sign up for our weekly newsletter. In the meantime, wishing all of you and your loved ones well, stay healthy and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Juliet. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.